Welcome to Lesson 15 of Story-Based English. A couple is hosting a dinner party when an unexpected guest arrives. Who is this person, and how will they change the evening? By the end of this lesson, you will know 10 new vocabulary words, and you will master question tags and echo questions, two incredibly useful features of spoken English that make your conversations sound natural and fluent. Let's begin.
Okay, here is our first sentence. Sarah and David were known for their hospitality, weren't they? And that evening, when an old acquaintance appeared at their door, they did not hesitate to invite him in. Let me read that one more time. Sarah and David were known for their hospitality, weren't they? And that evening, when an old acquaintance appeared at their door, they did not hesitate to invite him in.
All right, let's dive into this first sentence. First, the word hospitality. Hospitality is the friendly and generous treatment of guests and visitors. If someone has great hospitality, they make you feel welcome, comfortable, and cared for. Hotels, restaurants, and airlines are part of the hospitality industry. In many cultures, hospitality is one of the highest social values. Offering food, drink, and comfort to a guest is a form of respect. Now the word acquaintance. An acquaintance is someone you know, but not very well. They are more than a stranger, but less than a friend. A colleague you have met a few times, a neighbor you wave to. These are acquaintances. In English, the distinction between friend and acquaintance matters. Calling someone a friend implies closeness. Calling someone an acquaintance implies you know them only casually. Now the grammar. Look at this. Sarah and David were known for their hospitality, weren't they? That little weren't they at the end is a question tag. A question tag is a short question added to the end of a statement to confirm information or invite agreement. The rule is beautifully logical. If the main sentence is positive, the tag is negative. They were known for it, weren't they? Positive statement, negative tag. She is coming, isn't she? You have finished, haven't you? He likes coffee, doesn't he? The tag uses the auxiliary verb from the main clause. Were known uses were, so the tag is weren't they. She is coming uses is, so the tag is isn't she. If there is no auxiliary, use do, does, or did. He likes coffee, doesn't he? Question tags are everywhere in spoken English. They soften statements, seek agreement, and make conversation flow naturally. Without them, statements can sound too direct or cold. The unexpected guest has arrived. Let's find out who he is. Here is sentence 2. The guest, a tall man named Thomas, immediately captured the room with his intrigue. He told one fascinating anecdote after another, each more surprising than the last. One more time. The guest, a tall man named Thomas, immediately captured the room with his intrigue. He told one fascinating anecdote after another, each more surprising than the last. Thomas is quite the character. First, the word intrigue. Intrigue means a quality of being fascinating and mysterious. If someone has intrigue, they draw people in. You want to know more about them. Intrigue can also be a noun meaning a secret plot, political intrigue. But in this context, it means a captivating, mysterious quality that attracts attention. Now, the word anecdote. An anecdote is a short, interesting, or amusing story about a real event or person. When someone at a party says, "Let me tell you about the time I got lost in Tokyo," that is an anecdote. Anecdotes are not full stories. They are short, personal, and usually have a point or a funny ending. Great speakers and writers use anecdotes to illustrate their ideas and engage their audience. In this sentence, there is no direct question tag, but notice the storytelling patterns. Thomas is building rapport, connection, through anecdotes. In the next sentences, we will see question tags and echo questions appear as the conversation deepens. Thomas is fascinating, but not everyone trusts him. Let's see what happens next. Here is sentence 3. David was reluctant at first. He couldn't be sure about Thomas, could he? But even David had to admit the man was undeniably charismatic. Let me read that again. David was reluctant at first. He couldn't be sure about Thomas, could he? But even David had to admit the man was undeniably charismatic. Now, the tension between doubt and charm. First, the word reluctant. If you are reluctant to do something, you are unwilling or hesitant. You might eventually do it, but not with enthusiasm. She was reluctant to lend him money. He was reluctant to admit his mistake. Reluctant does not mean you refuse. It means you agree, but with hesitation. Now, the word charismatic. A charismatic person has a natural ability to attract and influence people through their personality. They are engaging, confident, and magnetic. Politicians, leaders, and performers are often described as charismatic. Charisma is the noun. You either have charisma or you do not, although some argue it can be developed. Now, the grammar. Look carefully. He couldn't be sure, could he? This is a negative sentence plus a positive tag, the opposite of what we learned before. If the main sentence is negative, he couldn't be sure, the tag is positive, could he? So the full pattern is positive sentence, negative tag, negative sentence, positive tag. It always flips. More examples. She hasn't arrived, has she? Negative, then positive. They won't be late, will they? Negative, then positive. He doesn't like fish, does he? Negative, then positive. The logic is always the same. The statement and the tag have opposite polarity. Positive goes with negative. Negative goes with positive. This makes the tag feel balanced and natural.
Let's recap. Can you remember the two question tag patterns? Pattern 1, positive statement, negative tag. She is clever, isn't she? Pattern 2, negative statement, positive tag. He doesn't know, does he? The tag always has the opposite polarity to the statement. Positive flips to negative. Negative flips to positive. Now, let's learn about a completely different type of question used in conversation.
Here is sentence 4. Pay close attention. I've actually spent 3 years living in a monastery in Tibet, Thomas said casually. You did what? Sarah gasped, stunned by the revelation. One more time. I've actually spent 3 years living in a monastery in Tibet, Thomas said casually. You did what? Sarah gasped, stunned by the revelation.
What a dramatic moment, and it introduces our second grammar topic. First, the word revelation. A revelation is a surprising piece of information that changes your understanding. When Thomas reveals he lived in a monastery for 3 years, that is a revelation. It shocks everyone and makes them see him differently. Remember, we learned this word back in episode 12 with the auction. How wonderful that it appears here again with the same sense of a shocking discovery. Now, the grammar. Sarah says, you did what? This is an echo question. An echo question repeats part of what someone said, but with a question word replacing the surprising element. Thomas said he spent 3 years in a monastery. You did what? Echoes the statement but questions the shocking part. Echo questions express surprise, disbelief, or a request for clarification. They are extremely common in natural spoken English. Here are more examples. If I say, I just bought a castle, you might respond, you bought what? If I say, she moved to Antarctica, you might say, she moved where? If I say, I paid $10,000 for a pair of shoes, you might say, you paid how much? The pattern is simple. Repeat the structure of the original statement, but replace the surprising part with a question word. What, where, who, how much, when? The stress falls heavily on the question word. You did what? She went where? He said what? The stress communicates the surprise. Echo questions are so useful. Let's see how the evening continues after Thomas's shocking revelation. Here is sentence 5. Thomas then shared something deeply personal. His years in the monastery had taught him that compassion, not success, is life's most profound lesson. Let me read that again. Thomas then shared something deeply personal. His years in the monastery had taught him that compassion, not success, is life's most profound lesson. This is the emotional core of the story. First, the word compassion. Compassion is a deep feeling of care and concern for the suffering of others, combined with a desire to help. It goes beyond sympathy. Sympathy is feeling sorry for someone. Compassion is feeling something so deeply that you want to act. Compassion is considered one of the most important human qualities across all cultures and religions. Now, the word profound. Profound means very deep, intense, or significant. A profound lesson changes the way you think forever. A profound difference is a huge difference. A profound silence is a silence so deep you feel it in your bones. Profound goes beyond important. It touches something fundamental about life, existence, or understanding. Notice two things about this sentence. First, it uses abstract nouns in a beautiful pattern, compassion and success, both general concepts with 0 articles, just as we learned in the previous lesson. Second, consider how you might respond to this sentence in conversation. If someone says, compassion is life's most profound lesson, you might use a question tag. That is really beautiful, isn't it? Or an echo question if you are surprised. Compassion, not success? He really believes that? Both of our grammar points, question tags and echo questions, are tools for responding to powerful statements like this one.
Let's read the final sentence and see how this unexpected evening ends. Here is our final sentence. Listen carefully. By the end of the evening, they all felt it, didn't they? A bond that had not existed before, one that would stay with each of them for years to come. One last time. By the end of the evening, they all felt it, didn't they? A bond that had not existed before, one that would stay with each of them for years to come. What a beautiful way to end the story. First, the word bond. A bond is a strong connection or feeling of closeness between people, a family bond, a bond between friends, a bond of trust. Bonds are deeper than casual relationships. If you share a bond with someone, you have a meaningful, often lasting connection. Bond can also mean a financial instrument or a physical restraint, but in storytelling, it almost always means an emotional connection. Now the final grammar point. They all felt it, didn't they? This question tag does not just seek information, it invites the reader to feel part of the story. It says, you see what happened, right? You understand, don't you? This brings us to a crucial aspect of question tags, intonation and purpose. There are 2 ways to say a question tag. With falling intonation, they all felt it, didn't they? This means you are quite sure and are just confirming. You expect a yes. With rising intonation, they all felt it, didn't they? This means you are genuinely asking. You are not sure and really want an answer. In writing, the punctuation helps. A period after the tag suggests falling intonation, confirmation. A question mark suggests either. But in speech, the intonation is everything. In this story, the question tag with falling intonation creates a beautiful effect. The narrator includes us, the readers, in the emotion. They felt it, didn't they? Yes, we know they did, and we feel it too. That is the magic of question tags. They are not just grammar. They are emotional bridges between speakers. They connect you to the person you are talking to. All right, now that we have broken everything down, let's listen to the entire story one more time, from beginning to end. Just listen and follow along. Sarah and David were known for their hospitality, weren't they? And that evening, when an old acquaintance appeared at their door, they did not hesitate to invite him in. The guest, a tall man named Thomas, immediately captured the room with his intrigue. He told one fascinating anecdote after another, each more surprising than the last. David was reluctant at first. He couldn't be sure about Thomas, could he? But even David had to admit the man was undeniably charismatic. I've actually spent 3 years living in a monastery in Tibet, Thomas said casually. You did what? Sarah gasped, stunned by the revelation. Thomas then shared something deeply personal. His years in the monastery had taught him that compassion, not success, is life's most profound lesson. By the end of the evening, they all felt it, didn't they? A bond that had not existed before, one that would stay with each of them for years to come. And that was our story. Sometimes the most unexpected guests leave the deepest impressions. And that is a wrap for this lesson. Congratulations! Let's look at everything you learned. Vocabulary. You learned 10 new words. Hospitality, acquaintance, intrigue, anecdote, reluctant, charismatic, revelation, compassion, profound, and bond. 10 words that capture the art of human connection. Grammar. You mastered question tags, both positive to negative and negative to positive patterns. You learned echo questions for expressing surprise, and you understood how intonation changes the meaning of question tags. You have now completed 15 lessons, 15 stories. You have built a massive vocabulary and grammar foundation. Be incredibly proud of how far you have come. Head over to the quiz section to test yourself and try the role play section. Practice a dinner party conversation using question tags and echo questions. See you in lesson 16.